mind that's capable of hearing and understanding the teachings on renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom. And so let's value our opportunity and value our life, and especially apply it to the Dharma, not simply for our own well-being and happiness, but in order to make a contribution to the welfare of other living beings, and to make this contribution through spiritual means, through developing ourselves spiritually, so that we'll have unique wisdom, compassion, and ability to be of great benefit to living beings. So let's develop that as our long-term motivation for why we are listening to teachings this evening. So the last 2 weeks I was away, and so in Mexico, south of the border, enjoying the warm people, the warm-hearted people. And so now we'll pick up from where we left off in the Mind Training Light Rays of the Sun. So we've been going through, we're on this section that is talking about the irreversible commitments of mind training. Okay? So if we want to practice mind training, thought transformation, however you want to translate it, these are some very crucial points that we should make sure that we understand properly and then put into practice. And these points are incredibly helpful because they're really practical. You know, there's nothing kind of difficult and mysterious about them. You don't need a great philosophical background to understand these commitments and precepts of mind training. But we need a lot of mindfulness and introspective alertness and conscientiousness and courage to put them into practice. Okay? So when we had stopped last time, we were on one of the commitments that says, train consistently to deal with difficult situations. And so then the text was talking about 5 difficult situations. And so these are in terms of 5 kinds of sentient beings, or 5 situations with sentient beings that we find difficult. So I'll review the first 2, even though we covered them before. So it says, firstly, since even the slight misbehavior towards the 3 jewels, your abbot, spiritual master, parents, and so forth, who are all very kind to you, is extremely serious, you should be careful not to lose your temper with them. Okay? So because these are powerful objects for us, especially the 3 jewels, our preceptor, our teachers, our Dharma teachers, then to be very careful not to get upset with them. And with our parents, because of their kindness in giving us this body and bringing us up, then to be careful not to lose our temper with them. However, these are often the people we get the maddest at, because we have a lot of issues with authority, and it comes out right in terms of these people. We put them in a position of authority, and then we rebel. Right? Yeah? So, it can be quite interesting to watch very old patterns come out here, in terms of our rebellion, in terms of our, give me what I want, but don't tell me what to do. All these kinds of things. Don't get on my case. We tend to project a lot of things, and so it's easy to lose our temper with them. So it's something to be careful about because they're very powerful objects for us. Then the second one says, secondly, as there are many opportunities for disturbing emotions to arise in relation to the members of your family because you live with them all the time, this requires special training. So in the case of a layperson, you live with your family, and again, these are often the people that you treat the worst and get the maddest at, and expect them to still love you. And so to be very careful. In terms of monastics, our family are the other monastics at the monastery or abbey. And again, because we live with them, these are the people that get on our nerves, and we don't like what they do, and they don't do what we tell them to, and they tell us to do things we don't want to do, and so it's very easy to get upset with them and create a lot of negative karma. And so, our author here, Nam Kapel, is pointing out that it's important to pay special attention to those relationships because we see the people so often. So if we let our mind go into a negative space regarding somebody, then because we see them on a daily basis, then we're going to cultivate this negative thought about them again and again until everything they do is wrong. And we've seen this happen. We watch our own mind. Hasn't it happened to you? Yeah, where you develop this negative image of somebody, and then it's like even they say good morning, and that is ammunition for your opinion, how they're really like this and that, and how they wash the dishes just confirms your negative opinion of them. How they walk is more evidence, and we just take out the firing squad, and meanwhile these people, it's like, yeah, poor innocent people, but what our mind is making them into. Yeah, and so we can really dig ourselves into quite a ditch doing this, letting our mind go in that place, because we see these people so often, until the point comes where one day they say, thank you, and we explode and go, what do you mean, thank you? Okay. And so it's our mind, isn't it? It's our mind. You're looking at me like, I don't really believe that. It's really them. Yeah, it's really them, isn't it? It's really them. Okay, then the third one. Thirdly, you should train yourself particularly in relation to everyone, whether an ordained or layperson, who appears to be your rival. Otherwise, when even a small misfortune befalls them, it may create satisfaction in your heart. Okay, so we like to think of ourselves as practitioners of the thought transformation. We have a magnanimous heart towards everybody, and we don't like to admit that actually we compete with others. Okay, and we can compete with others in all sorts of ways. Of course, there's the usual ways in sports and, for intelligence and this and that and the other thing. But especially in a Dharma environment, we compete as to, who is closest to the teacher, who the teacher looks at the most, who can sit the stillest in meditation position, who gets praised the most, who can memorize the most lists, all sorts of things. Who has done more mantra than we have, who has done more retreats. We compete with other people, even in a Dharma setting. And so if we're not careful about this, and we see people as rivals, then when some misfortune befalls them, we go, oh, that's nice. That'll get them out of the way. That'll disable my rival. And that kind of thought is completely the opposite of what we want to be cultivating as spiritual practitioners, especially as practitioners of thought transformation. Because in thought transformation, we're really trying to subdue our self-centered mind. So, if other people do better than us, then we should rejoice. Oh, good, they did this. So now my ego's hurting and my, self-centered thought's my real enemy, so I'm glad that's happening. Okay, but if we're not really careful, about this and really practice the thought training, then we keep up this kind of competition, and then if somebody gets sick or somebody makes a mistake or whatever, we just kind of sit and gloat. Yeah. But we gloat very discreetly, don't we? Because after all, we're Dharma practitioners, and so we can't let anybody know that we're gloating. We conceal it. Right? Don't we? Don't we? Yeah? Okay, then fourth, you should make a point of training yourself in relation to those who accuse you when you have done nothing against them. Because there is a risk that, as the saying goes, if the fire of hatred burns, the moisture of compassion will dry up. Okay, so especially in relationship to the people who accuse us of doing things that we haven't done. Yeah. So this can happen so easily, can't it? I mean, people don't read our mind. They don't know why we're doing what we do. We often don't communicate well. We don't inform people. And so when somebody seems to make a remark that we, of course, take extremely personally because it's about us, and it seems like they're accusing us of doing something that we haven't done, then we get irate. The object of negation of the emptiness meditation blossoms forth. Yeah. And the wrong conception of the I comes out. I, who do you think you're talking to? And accusing me of doing this. I did not forget to put the clean sign on the dishwasher and leave the dirty sign. That was somebody else who did that. Don't blame me. Right? Okay, so, there are these incredibly crucial, important things that happen during the day. Yeah? And then others accuse us of, of not doing our job right. And it's just remarkable, these people, how stupid they are and inappropriate their accusations are, when they should know that we don't make any mistakes. And if we do, they shouldn't notice them. Okay? Of course, it's our privilege to notice their mistakes, and they happen to make plenty of them. And out of great compassion, we point that out. Right? For your own benefit, I'm going to tell you that you click your beads too loud in the meditation hall. I'm afraid the people who are watching this online are going to think, boy, this is what they get upset at the Abbey. These people spend their time getting upset about these things and we're supporting them. Yep. Kind of embarrassing, isn't it? At least we could get upset about some good things, some worthwhile things. Okay, fifth, you should pay special attention in your meditation to those people, the mere sight of whom or the mere sound of whose names you dislike, even though they have done nothing against you. Because of this, there is a great danger of becoming angry with them. Okay? So there's some people that we just catch sight of them even out of the corner of our eye, and our mind goes ballistic. It's like, I don't want to be around that person. I'm afraid of them, or they threaten, we're afraid they're going to threaten us, or they compete with us and they win, or they point out our faults, or something, But we're just like so sensitive, and we just catch sight of that person and cringe. And then some people, even if we hear our friends talking about them and, mentioning their name, especially in a pleasant way, but it's somebody who we've had a bad experience with, we can't stand it, can we? Yeah? Is there somebody you can think of right off the bat? You just hear their name and, your mind just, yeah? So this could be somebody you know. It also could be somebody you don't know. If we have a great deal of dislike towards a certain politician or somebody who is very prominent in society, whose views we disagree with or whose decisions we think are unwise, then it's very easy to get angry with these people, and it's very easy to lose our compassion for them, and get into a very self-righteous mode. Okay, so these are the 5 groups of people to be careful with, because it's so easy for us to for a negative mind state to arise in relationship with them. Okay, so our spiritual teachers and preceptors and parents, the people who we live with every day, either family members or community members. Okay, then the third is people who we see as rivals, who we want to compete with. Yeah. Fourth is the people who accuse us when we haven't done anything wrong. And then fifth are these people, the mere sight or sound of whom we just can't endure. Okay? So especially to pay attention with them. And I think it's very helpful, when we're doing our meditation on equanimity or on the kindness of others, to make sure that we focus on these people, particularly, because the ease with which we lose our mental peace in relationship with them is not going to go away simply by ignoring it. We're going to have to really deal with it and see what our buttons are and why we are so reactive to certain people. Okay, then the next of the commitments of mind training says, don't rely on other conditions. Okay, and so this is actually the text prefaces this with saying, in order to acquire equanimity towards those 5 groups of people. Okay, then the text says, don't rely on other conditions. So what does this mean? In general, whatever you are practicing, such as listening or contemplation, if favorable conditions are assembled, it will be successful, and if the conditions are not met, it will fail. Yet if someone who enters into this practice and engages sincerely in mind training is able to see the lack of favorable conditions as a stepping stone, he will have no fear of external or internal obstacles and will make great advancement towards the awakening mind. Okay? So, generally in our life, if we have conducive conditions, then things go smoothly, and especially for our practice, if we have good conditions, then our practice goes well. So this can be external conditions, internal conditions. But if the conditions aren't good, then we tend to become reactive, we lose our confidence, we lose our patience, we get upset, and our practice seems very stuck. Now, since we cannot control the external conditions, and very often we can't even control what internal karma ripens in terms of our states of mind and so forth, then we have to develop some way to remain equanimous and to remain steady even when conditions change. Okay? And so what the thing to do is to practice the thought training teachings, because the author is saying if we practice them, then when these conditions come up, instead of seeing them as bad conditions, we'll see them as things that we can work with through practicing the Dharma. And so if you have this attitude of thought training, then anything that you encounter can be transformed into the path to enlightenment, and then we don't need to be so afraid of what's going to happen. Okay? And, in terms of outer and inner conditions, our minds are so unstable, because I've seen over the years, any slight change of conditions, even if you think the change would be to a better condition for practice, just the fact of the change, and people stop practicing. Okay? So if people are working a lot of overtime and they say, I have no time to practice because I have to work so much overtime, then if they go down to, let's say, part-time, then they stop coming to Dharma class. You would think that, okay, my schedule's gone down, I have more time to practice, I can come more, this is good, No, because it's change, then stop coming to the center. Or if they, let's say somebody's very lonely and they say, I can't practice because I'm just so consumed with my loneliness, then they meet somebody and start a relationship, then they stop their Dharma practice. You would think that, that having met, satisfied that loneliness, that then they would be more open and receptive to Dharma. No. And so it's very interesting to see how sometimes with the smallest change, people will just stop their practice or stop attending teachings. Yeah? I've really seen it again and again over the years. So when it says, don't rely on other conditions, it means, don't make our practice dependent on external things, or don't make our practice even dependent on our own internal mood, because then when we're in a bad mood, we'll stop practicing, or when we're in a good mood, we'll stop practicing. Yeah? Because some people practice when they're unhappy, and they stop when they get happy, and other people practice when they're happy, and they stop when they're unhappy. So if we make that one of our conditions, then we're not going to be able to practice in a steady way. Yeah? But when we can see anything that we encounter, be it something that our normal mind would judge as good or bad, or conducive or not conducive, when we see all of this as opportunity to practice, then we can maintain a steady practice. And that's very important in order to be able to get anywhere in our practice. If we're always stopping and starting and stopping and starting, then, we always have to go back and retrace our steps and rebuild what we did before, because we lost it when we stopped. Okay? Okay. Then it is clear that you need steadfast behavior in the course of your practice. And so for this, then the line from the text, the advice is, transform your attitude, but maintain your natural behavior. And the explanation is, at no time should your thoughts be separated from becoming acquainted with the awakening mind. There should be no sudden change in your physical or verbal conduct, and your behavior should not differ from that of ordinary people. The great Chekawa said that all our practices of mind training should be inconspicuous to the outside world, but in reality there should be great improvement. Okay? So, what it's saying here is transform our attitude, but our behavior should, blend in with the behavior of others, okay? In other words, of course, once our attitude improves, our behavior is going to improve. We're not going to be lying and gossiping about people and things like that. So that part of our behavior will change. But what it's talking about here is sometimes when people start practicing Dharma, they put on airs, you know? And so, you know, in the thought training, you know, like, oh, well, you know, I'm doing this meditation and I've been taking on all your suffering. You know, I'm kind of a very special practitioner, yeah? Or, you know, kind of doing this thing of, you know, just crying with compassion whenever you see anything, you know, to show how sensitive you are to compassion. Or, you know, just putting on some kind of weird behavior. You know, people start meditating and then you see them sit there. Oh, yes, you were talking to me? Oh, yes, yes. You know, kind of like they're, you know, going into meditation trances or something and coming out, you know, to grace you with their presence. Or you see people who get into tantric practice and, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, they're growing their hair and having matted hair and they're carrying a big mala around with a, you know, with a bone mala with a dorje and a bell and, you know, and having the, you know, their dorje and bell and drum, and you could hear their, in their room, you know, they're ringing the bell and playing the drum all the time and going, oh, you know, and, you know, trying to pretend like there's some kind of great practitioner. So what this line is saying is, you know, don't do that. Be a practitioner inside your own heart, but your behavior should just be natural and, you know, fit in with other people, and don't make yourself conspicuous. Don't make yourself into a spectacle. Yeah. Oh, I won't tell that story. After it's not taping. But yeah, so, you know, we should really just be kind of cultivate kindness, let that change our behavior, but not be ostentatious in any sort of way. Okay. Yeah. Okay, then so that's how we maintain steadfast behavior. Okay. Then, when you have entered into the practice of mind training, you should not criticize or point out other people's faults. The text says, don't speak of others' incomplete qualities. Or another way of putting it is, speak not of the shortcomings of others. Okay, so this means don't pick at others' faults. Yeah, don't let your judgmental mind run the show. They say if you're walking near a cliff, watch your own feet. Don't watch everybody else's feet. So in the same way, you know, in our life, we should watch our own mind and our own actions and not pay so much attention to what other people are doing or not doing. And there's a beautiful quote from in one of the sutras, and I think it's also in our Sojung text, that just how a bee goes and it goes from flower to no, I'm sorry, I'm confusing my quotes. There's a quote maybe in the Dhammapada where the Buddha said, don't look at what others have done or left undone, but look at yourself, what you've done or left undone. Okay? So instead of spending our time picking faults in other people, yeah, with a magnifying glass, then use a mirror and look at our own behavior and correct that. So this is sometimes a big problem. Our mind can be extremely judgmental and critical of other people. I call it kind of the sportscaster mind. You know how you can just sit somewhere in a public place where people are walking by, and you walk by, and then your mind just makes all these comments about them. You know, why is this one walking this way? Why are they walking that way? You know, their clothes don't match, their hair is a funny color, their nose is too big, their nose is too small. Our mind just gives this kind of stream of negative comments about everybody who comes into our sight. And if we just let our mind do that, it's going to be very difficult to cultivate compassion, isn't it? You know, because to cultivate compassion, we have to have an attitude of kindness towards others. Yeah, that isn't, you know, expecting others to be perfect. Perfection meaning what we like. Okay, so really stopping that judgmental mind that picks at the faults of others and is always on the outlook, you know, for what they do. And I have to laugh because some of the skits, you know, remember the skit they did about the kitchen? Yeah? That's exactly it. You know, each one of us comes in and you're not using the right towel to dry the dishes with. And, you know, and we get on all these different things. And that's, you know, that's not the kind of attitude to have towards others. Yeah? Especially people who don't know, you know. Okay. And then you should give up criticizing humans and non-human beings out of spite and should not point out their mistakes. So that's kind of talking about that previous verse. And it also is leading into the next verse. And here the text says, don't concern yourself with others' business. But we like to concern ourselves with others' business, don't we? Yeah? Okay, the explanation here, okay, and actually another translation of this is think not about whatever is seen in others, okay? But you should neither think nor say such things as I am able to cope because I am a practitioner of mind training. Otherwise, it would be impossible to deal with such a person. Okay? So that's what it means by don't concern yourself with others' business. You know, don't just, again, it's this whole thing of don't just look for others' fault and don't sit and wait for other people to make a mistake and then gloat about how strong your thought training practice is because you're able to put up with such nincompoops. Okay. But that's the way the text explains this mind of don't concern yourself with others' business, meaning don't concern ourselves with what other people are doing. But in a Western way, it could mean don't concern ourselves with the affairs of other people's lives, which we often like to do, don't we? We want to know all the minute details of what is going on in this person's life and that person's life and who they're seeing and who they're not seeing and what they're doing and why are they making that decision and why are they going here and they shouldn't live their life like this, they should live their life like that. That was such a stupid thing for them to do. And, you know, getting involved in other people's business. Or with our American fix-it mind, we get involved in other people's business wanting to fix their problems. Okay, this relative has a problem, so I'm going to go fix their problem, and that one has their problem, and I'm going to go fix their problem. And we're so busy fixing everybody else's problem that we haven't noticed our own problems and haven't done anything about our own problems. Okay, because we're Mr. and Ms. Fix-It. Yeah. And it's a funny kind of mind, this one, that minds others' business like that. It's kind of a mind of self-importance. You know, it's like they really need me to fix their problems. You know, because if I don't get involved in their lives and fix their problems, you know, they're going to fall apart. They really need me. Yeah? Have you ever seen that kind of mind in yourself? Oh, really? In you? Really? So, you know, this is what we often do, you know. We kind of make ourselves important to other people. Don't they call it codependence? Something like that? where we like to feel, we create a circumstance where we play into a circumstance where they need us because we need to feel needed. And so that's how we're getting involved in others' business, but not in a very helpful way, really. Okay? Okay, next one. So the fruits of your meditation should not be polluted with self-interest. And here the text says, give up every hope of reward. Okay? So the explanation is you should not expect any mundane prosperity in this life or future lives as a result of your meditation, nor should you seek the states of liberation and omniscience out of self-interest. This is because the state of enlightenment should be sought in the interest of sentient beings. The ornament for clear realizations, which was written by Maitreya, says, the awakening mind is generated for others' welfare. The wish is for perfectly accomplished enlightenment. Okay? So, while we're practicing the Dharma, and especially the thought training, we should give up all hope for any kind of worldly benefit from doing our practice. Okay? So when it says give up hope for reward, give up thinking that, others will give me presents, they'll make offerings to me, they'll say nice kinds of things to me, or they'll say nice things to other people about me, or, I'll get a better reputation out of it, or when I need something I can ask them for it, or, all these kinds of things. We're always looking for some kind of perk. They'll write me a letter of recommendation, they'll put me in touch with somebody important. So when we practice the Dharma, our practice should not be looking for any kind of worldly rewards like this. This does not mean that if people make offerings to us or give us gifts, that we should push it back and say, no, 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 don't give me anything. Okay? Because that could come from a mind thinking I'm not worthwhile. And that's not a very helpful state of mind for practicing the Dharma either. And if we keep on going, no, no, don't give me anything, then it impedes other people trying to create merit through their generosity. So if people give us gifts, we should say thank you. And if, we can use it, fine, or we could give it to somebody else. Similarly, if somebody praises us, instead of going, don't praise me, I don't deserve it, I'm not worthwhile, just say thank you, and then think that the praise actually goes to the Buddha and the whole lineage of spiritual masters, because whatever we were able to do that, gave a good visualization, as Lama Yeshe would put it, to this person, comes through the fact that we've received the teachings from the Buddha and the lineage. Okay? So, not letting our mind get polluted by looking for praise, reputation, approval, contacts, fame, offerings, all these kinds of things. Yeah, and it's very, very easy for this kind of thing to happen. We very easily can our mind gets polluted with stuff, and we even could get to the point of expecting things from other people. Like, don't they realize who I am? They should do, let me sit in the front, and they should, do this for me, and they should do that for me. These rude, inconsiderate people, and we could really become quite obnoxious. Yeah, so it's something to really be careful of. And so especially with the 8 worldly concerns, we should never think, oh, no problem, I'm not influenced by them, because as soon as we think that about anything, boy, our complacency and our arrogance digs us into a trench. Yeah, and we get stuck. Okay. Yeah. So especially, sometimes we might even, hear somebody say, oh, so-and-so's a real bodhisattva. You should see what they did. And we're sitting there going, oh, that person thinks I'm a bodhisattva. I know I'm not, but it's kind of nice to think that somebody thinks I am. Yeah. And we can get pretty kind of full of ourselves. Okay. Now we're entering this section that is called the explanation of what appears in the text as maxims. So as nice pithy sayings. And so a lot of these ones, these commitments and precepts and maxims and so forth, they're really nice. They're very short phrases that if we can even memorize or even learn the meaning of them, then in so many of our daily activities, we can call them to mind, and they can guide our behavior and guide our thoughts. Because you'll find something will come up in your life, and you'll just remember this one, and it's like, oh, this is what I need to practice right now. Okay, and they're all based on reducing the self-centered thought and the self-grasping ignorance. Okay, so the first maxim, or pithy saying, is avoid poisonous food. So it doesn't literally mean, food that's poisonous. But, the explanation says, generally good food nourishes the body, but if it is poisoned, it can cause death. Similarly, the state of enlightenment springs from listening, contemplation, and so forth. But if these activities are polluted by misconceptions, such as the 8 worldly concerns and selfish thoughts of I and mine, they can take the life of liberation and omniscience. Okay, so they can kill our chances for liberation and omniscience. So please don't let whatever merit you acquire be sullied by them. Okay, so the afflictions, especially what we call the 3 poisonous attitudes, ignorance, anger, and attachment, but actually all the afflictions, and the self-centered mind, then these things, if we let them, and the self-grasping ignorance, take over our mind, then, our whole practice falls apart and falls into shambles. Okay? So they're really like poison for it's the same thing I was saying before. If we get complacent and then these kind of different thoughts and emotions come in our mind, then we don't notice it, we don't counteract them, and then they basically take the life out of our practice, because instead of practicing love and compassion, we start practicing egoism. So this, even could be quite dangerous when people are have the position of being a leader in a Dharma group, or, start giving Dharma talks, or start being considered a teacher. It's so easy when you're put in certain positions of leadership where people respect the position, then you start thinking, oh, well, I really have the qualities that fulfill this position. And I really am that great, and therefore these people should really listen to me, and they should do this and that, and then the whole mind just gets polluted by the 8 worldly concerns. I think I've told you many times about one of my teachers, Geshe Topten, who was so humble, and everywhere he went was always took care just to be kind of very, very humble and not ostentatious and everything like that. Really quite a good example for us. And he did retreat up in the mountains above Dharamsala for many years, and not even his attendant ever saw his dorje and bell or any of his tantric things. He just kept everything completely private, completely low-key, and quite a wonderful example. And Genlam Rinpa, who was the one for who DFF was started, he practiced in the same kind of way. Yeah. Very, very, very humble. And I remember the last few times I saw him, he was just incredibly happy. I mean, just beaming and radiating. Okay, so avoid poisonous food. Then don't maintain inverted loyalty. This refers to holding a grudge against people for some small wrong they have done you and retaliating angrily. You should never indulge in such behavior, or every chance of generating love and compassion towards these people will be destroyed. Okay, so it's called inverted loyalty, because when we're loyal to somebody, our mind goes to them a lot, we maintain a consistent attitude, and this is an inverted loyalty because the consistent attitude is a grudge. Yeah, the consistent attitude is the wish to retaliate or the wish for revenge. So that's why it said don't maintain inverted loyalty. Yeah. So it's very, very easy for us to hold grudges against people. And sometimes over small, small things, sometimes over big things. It doesn't matter if it's a small thing or a big thing. The person who suffers most when we hold a grudge is ourselves. And when we act without a vengeance to retaliate and get even, then we create the cause for our own misery because we're creating negative karma, aren't we? Yeah. And yet our grudges, we can hold on to those things so tenaciously. I remember when I did the Vajrasattva retreat, and trying to think about Vajrasattva, but mostly thinking about myself. Once in a while I got distracted and saw Vajrasattva. But I remember that it hit me that I was still mad at my second grade teacher because she wouldn't let me be in the class play. All those years holding a grudge against Mrs. Dukaman because she wouldn't let me be in the class play. I don't know why, But, even these kinds of things, for some slight reason, for some small thing, our mind can grab onto. And let alone the big things that people grab onto, And I was just, writing to somebody where there's a case of this person heard that his sister said some, very painful things about him. And in the whole time when he was telling me this, I thought she had said the words directly to him. She hadn't. He heard them through somebody else. And for years, holding on to the words that some other person told him his sister said about him was causing him such internal mental pain and grief. And making him so mad at his sister for all these things and not wanting to talk to her, and yet, it's his sister and he loves her. And so this kind of situation is really something quite pitiful, isn't it? And then you think of the person who said what the sister said to my friend. I mean, those are not the kinds of things that you say and pass on to other people, especially when it's going to be colored by your own judgment and you pick out the details. And it's an excellent example of using our speech to create disharmony, isn't it? And so this person having all this grief and alienation and kind of, wanting some revenge because he felt so hurt. And actually, who knows what the sister even said? We don't even know. Yeah? So, things like this, if we look in our own life, and especially with family, people can hold on to the smallest things, and never forgive. And it's so painful, especially for the person holding the grudge. And we think somehow, our grudge is going to damage them because they hurt us, but it doesn't. It's like wanting the death penalty, thinking that your dear one was harmed and that you're going to feel better by somebody else getting killed. How is that going to make you feel better? It still doesn't bring your dear one back to life. But, people have often been taught that, yeah, you can hold a grudge and this person did something wrong and you should retaliate and so on and so forth. And then they really think that kind of thing is going to make them happy. Yeah? And it doesn't. And, I even know a family where, some of the siblings got very upset with one of the other siblings. And even when that one was dying, their children called the two that were upset and said, do you want to talk to him before he dies? No. And I thought, oh my goodness, wow, to hold such a grudge that even your brother, sister is dying and you don't even want to say goodbye, that's how much you cherish the animosity. And I find that so incredibly sad. Yeah. And so, definitely for somebody practicing the Dharma, we don't want to get into that. And yet, we can look at our minds sometimes and we can hold a grudge for a long time, can't we? Sometimes over teeny, teeny, teeny things. Things that happened many years ago that if we even told the person about them, that we remember so vividly, they don't even remember it. Mm-hmm. And yet we let this kind of thing disturb our mental peace, and it really cuts the lifeline of our practice to develop bodhicitta. Because how can you hold a grudge and develop bodhicitta? The two don't go together. Okay, so don't maintain inverted loyalty. Okay. Then the next one says, don't make malicious banter. Okay, or another way of translating it is be indifferent towards malicious jokes. But actually, that makes it sound, when it says be indifferent towards malicious jokes, it sounds like the other person's being malicious, but actually we'll see that the meaning of it is don't make malicious banter is our being malicious. Okay, our speaking out of ill will. So it says, do not speak abusively in a way that strikes at the heart of anyone who hears it. The esteemed Chekawa explains this as saying such things as, at the time you committed that offense, I did not respond, and it is not clear whether this has been done or not, and so forth. And I can't say that I understand those examples. Okay? Pouring out a string of such invective would ruin the seeds of your practice. So maybe saying something like that in Tibetan culture would be really, inappropriate, or there's some meaning to those sentences I'm not understanding. So I'll give some examples we can understand. When it says, don't make malicious banter, okay? So speaking abusively in a way that strikes at the heart of somebody, okay? So, well, let's see. Well, I'm sure you can come up with some ideas. What's some malicious banter that you've heard or said yourself? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Okay. So you're teasing somebody, but you go too far. So it becomes actually picking at them, or picking on them. Yeah, they're not playing. They look quite hurt. Okay. Yeah. Or sometimes we can really dig into somebody. We may know somebody might be sensitive about a certain thing, and yet we point that out repeatedly again and again and again, or we tease them or make fun of them about it. As children, we did that a lot, didn't we? Sometimes we're so cruel as children. Somebody's sensitive about something and we call them names and make fun of them. We may, just in the name of playing, do this, but actually there's a lot of hostility that we're expressing through our words, but it sounds like we're playing. Yeah. Or sometimes just out and out kind of speaking down to people, or speaking abusively, you know. Can't you do anything right? How often have we heard or said that? We all think, oh, I've heard that so often, but I've never said it. But everybody thinks that way, so I'm wondering who it is who says it. Yeah? So, you know, these kinds of things that sometimes, and especially if we're angry, and especially if it's somebody that, a family member or somebody that we're close to, we'll often really use malicious speech against them. Or some kind of speech, like I was saying before, seems to be playing, but actually we're criticizing and expressing hostility. You know? Mm-hmm.
There's one that I've been hearing lately, and I've actually used it once or twice, and I think it can be really condescending. It doesn't take a rocket scientist.
Oh, yeah.
You know, sometimes
Okay.
that's really an obvious thing, but if somebody's not getting something,
Right.
that gets said to them,
Right.
you know, sort of in jest.
Okay. So this thing that many people say, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand, da-da-da-da-da. If we speak that way about ourselves, fine. But sometimes we use that when somebody else doesn't understand something that we think is pretty obvious. And it's kind of humiliating to the other person. It's like saying, you dummy, don't you get it? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah, sarcasm can be another one of those things. And I know I tend to do that sometimes too. To speak in a sarcastic way, because it kind of appears as if you're playing, but you're really trying to, you know, get another point across to somebody else. So in a way, it's pretending to be clever, but actually.
Because oftentimes there's a playful intent.
Uh-huh.
So other people can experience it as being literally.
Right. Yeah, so there can be a playful intent to sarcasm, but other people feel belittled by it. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes sarcasm can be really confusing for a person. It's like, you know, what are they really trying to say? Why don't they just say it? Yeah. But then I've found that sometimes there's relationship with people where you can't say, you want to say something directly, and you can't, so you say it sarcastically, because then it sounds like a joke, and then they won't turn around and tell you to be quiet. Whereas if you just said it quite directly, they would get mad and, you know, kind of say, get off my back, or don't tell me what to do, or whatever. Yeah? So you use it that way. But it's not, yeah, it can sometimes create quite a funny feeling between people, you know, especially when they get in a habit of talking to each other sarcastically. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cynicism also is in that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Get cynical with another, and then it kind of escalates and you get hard-hearted.
Yeah. Okay. So cynicism, you're saying, well, it can get hard-hearted. It seems to me that cynicism is a fairly, I mean, already when we're being cynical, we're quite unhappy, and our speech gets out of kilter, you know, because then we just say, yeah, just to express that. But sometimes cynicism comes from pain. You know, I think most often it comes from pain, but it gets expressed as hostility. Yeah. And for some people it's hard to say that pains me, and so, you know, it's hard to say that, it's hard to acknowledge the pain, and so they say something sarcastic or something cynical as a way of expressing their pain. Yeah. So I think when we're around people like that, instead of saying, oh, they're so sarcastic, they shouldn't be like this, to really look and see the pain that is lying behind what they're saying. Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
I've heard a slightly different version of the slogan that she said about the reward.
Mm-hmm.
It was, give up all hope of fruition.
Mm-hmm.
I got a sense of it sometimes it's the way that we set ourselves up to have some unrealistic expectations, either as far as our practice or our relationships to others.
Mm-hmm.
So giving up all hope of fruition would be, don't go expecting things that either other people are capable of doing or that you're incapable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Has that ever been translated in that way?
I think it's more in terms of, because you're saying give up all hope of fruition. You mean expecting other people to become something?
Expecting an outcome that's unrealistic.
Yeah, expecting an outcome that's unreal. Well, that falls right in the 8 worldly concerns, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that falls right into the meaning of it. But it's something self-centered. It's not we're expecting something unrealistic like, somebody else's, I don't know, but it could be an unrealistic expectation where we're attached to some outcome due to our 8 worldly concerns. We want something. Okay.
Usually when I feel the disappointment and I feel the discouragement, then I realize that I've had an attachment to the outcome.
Right.
And that's sometimes when I look at that slogan, it reminds me when
Yeah.
you had an unrealistic expectation, you were attached to
Right,
something.
right.
It just brings me back to well, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, it could be this thing of, like we really like the Dharma, so we go and talk to to our family about the Dharma and really hope they're going to get interested and start practicing. And they say, oh, that's nice, and, pass the catch up. And then we feel like, oh, I was really hoping that they would, come and join me on the path, da-da-da. Yeah. Okay, but you can see that kind of expectation isn't really caring for them to practice the Dharma. It's because we get, we're attached to that kind of idea. Okay? Yeah?
I heard another saying, sort of like not eat poisonous food.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it was specifically Buddhist, but it's suitable because saying was drinking poison will quench the thirst. So if thirsty, drinking poison might momentarily quench our thirst, but in the long run, it's just kind of damage.
Yeah. So that's very much the idea about letting the mind get under the control of the poisonous attitudes. Is, especially like with anger, we might feel powerful for a minute when we're angry, but then the anger destroys our practice. Or we might have a real zip when we're full of attachment, and feel so energetic and alive, but then that attachment winds up poisoning our practice. Yeah. That's why it's so important to be able to discriminate, what is an afflicted state of mind and what isn't when they arise in us. Because, often we'll think an afflictive state of mind feels good, and we'll think a virtuous state of mind is boring. It's like we aren't always so good at discriminating these things. Okay. So let's try and practice all of this week.